Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California, this is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael, and today we welcome back to the show Angela Zeyn. She was on before talking to us about animal communication, but today we're going to get to know her more, her own spiritual journey, as well as talk about some of her other amazing abilities. But before we get started, Michael does have a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show again. And, of course, the big announcement is next week. We have a week from today, our 2-hour UFO extraterrestrial special. And we've got some great guests. We have Preston Dennett, who's an author, multiple books on the topic. We have Dolly Saffron, who is a contactee. And joining us for the first time, we'll have Earl Grey Anderson, who is the Southern California Director of MUFON, and we'll be joined by Matt Absher as our co-host for that one. So that's going to be a 2-hour special, so please check that out. Get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It really helps a lot. But most importantly, go to YouTube, click like and subscribe, help us grow our audience. And that, to me, just makes us so happy to see that growing. So please do that for us. I don't want to take up a lot more time because there's just so much fascinating material we're going to cover today with Angela. So I'm going to kick it back to you guys. So take it away, Krista.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And welcome back, Angela.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
This time in person.
Yeah. Last time was over the internet. I'm
Yes.
not good with the internet.
Yeah, you did great. I think I told you I re-listened to the show, and I'm always impressed by our guests when I go back and listen, because when you're doing the show, I mean, certainly I'm listening, but you can't just relax and take in the information. So I really enjoyed listening to it again, and today I thought it'd be really fun to just get to know your own story and then talk about some of your other abilities.
Thanks.
So let's, people like to know, I think I do, sort of people's origin stories. So what was maybe some of the key places where representing the beginnings of your own interest in spirituality in general, and certainly in all the psychic side of what you do?
I think my curiosity of the unknown has always been there. When I was little, I used to stay with a woman in the summertime, and there was in the trailer up the road. I lived in the middle of the mountains. You know, I grew up in the middle of Pennsylvania. So up the road, she was a healer. I was probably only like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. And I remember I had a wart on the back of my ankle, and she did a healing on it. She put her hands on it, and it went away. It came back, but it went away for a while. And I always stuck with me. So I was always curious. I was looking in the sky for things. So I think that was the opening of it, you know, as a little child. But, and me always being curious. I think in my late teens is when I started to play around with things a little more. When I was 18, I actually predicted how I was going to get to California. I didn't know that at the time. I just looked at my friend, and I remember saying to her, I'm going to be in California next year in this scenario. And that scenario happened. Oh. And then, I was kind of crazy in my younger years. Lots of partying, lots of debauchery. And so I always say I kind of went through the back door in a sense. And I think a lot of people that are spiritual and psychic and go through healers, or they go through a lot of stuff in life to get to that place. But I definitely went through the back door in the sense of my experience of seeing things started off kind of on the darker side of things, seeing shadow people, having an incubus that lived with me in my apartment for a while.
That's freaky.
Yeah, that was a really freaky experience. I don't know, do you want me to tell you this whole little story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I was moving into this place, And I was going to check out the place, and across the street, it was in Harper City, California.
Where's that? Harper City?
By Torrance.
Okay.
I haven't been back there since I lived there, like, I think I was like 20 or something, 19, 20. And across the street was this, like, old antique store. And I remember being in there with a friend of mine, and we were looking at things, and this woman came in, and she was very witchy-poo. Like, she just embodied the whole image of it, everything about her. And the guy that was with her, he was really, I don't know the word to say right now. He was an interesting character for sure. Like, there was something about that guy, and didn't have any communication with him. But as my friend and I were like looking at things, we noticed her, but she came around, and then she listened probably to my friend say my name, and she made a point of saying my name and saying something to me. But it just really stood out for some creepy reason. And I went back to the apartment, and I looked out my bedroom window, and I could see that store, and I just felt this, I don't even know, like, line of energy going. And then because I was in crazy mode in my life, partying a lot and stuff, it just opens those doors more.
Right.
And I just started having really weird experiences.
Was
really
it
weird.
when you're awake or asleep or both?
When I was asleep, but then it got stronger. The energy in that came got much stronger. And when I would leave, sometimes I'd leave for a few days or whatever, and my roommate would call me, "You have to come home. There's something in your room." It was always cold in that room. Mm-hmm. And I didn't not believe her, but at the same time, I kind of chuckle, you know, like, okay, Lisa, you're a little over the top. But one day when I was there, it was just me and my other roommate, and I was waiting for somebody to pick me up, and I could hear it in my bedroom call my name.
Oh,
loud as can be. And I looked at James, and I'm like, "Did you hear that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I heard that." I'm like, "Did it come from?" And I went outside looking, and there was nobody. It was really from the room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really dark and heavy duty. I left, went to New York for a couple months, came back, moved to a different apartment in that building, and it seemed to follow me, literally. And I had met a guy along the way, and he's like, you know, when something's going on, you just got to tell it to get out. And you have to really mean it. And after an excursion of a couple days of being wide awake and high out of my mind, I could just feel it all around me, and I just was over it. I just was so done with all of it because it felt like it kept me in what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I took his advice, and I went home, and I opened up all my windows and doors and screamed and told it to get out and whatever else I said to it. And I wasn't happy, and you can imagine. And the air just blew through my apartment, and it just left. I never experienced it again.
And an incubus is a sexual thing. Doesn't it draw sexual energy from you?
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd wake up.
That's creepy.
It was creepy. It was really creepy.
I also had, in the very beginning, as a little kid, I had a vampire nightmare that was so realistic. I could feel like the vampire on my neck touching I was just like in 4th grade. So and I wasn't partying. I wonder sometimes if that is a common initiation for people meeting up with a dark side of spiritual world.
I could go there with that. Yeah,
I mean, not everyone, but a lot
sense.
of people have sometimes, and I don't have a lot of scary stories, but that was how I got into it, in the sense that I knew there was something, you know, had to pay something else too. But yeah, that sounds really creepy. I have to. Why do you think that woman? Do you think it was a karmic thing, maybe, or it was just she just decided? Why do you think she just decided to?
You know, I've always wondered that. I've thought about it many times, and I don't really know. Like, energetically, she was definitely in the pathway for me to meet her. Mm-hmm. It made sense. I really started playing with tarot cards at that time, and I became really good. Like, wow, I was telling people things. I have funny stories about it, of many funny stories about that. But I think I just had a lot of doors opening up to other places that weren't so good. Yeah, I don't know.
So how did you sort of get to the point where you didn't necessarily unconsciously open the doors you didn't want to open? Because I'm not saying that I think people can still have obstacles, but it sounds like you got more disciplined about your spiritual openings, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you know, at that time, that same time period in that same area I lived in, I worked in a bar, and I met a guy in that bar. There was a customer there, and he has to look at my hand one day, and I was joking. I'm like, how do I look? Do I look like I'm doing okay? And he's like, you're doing okay. And then I saw him a few weeks later, and I wasn't doing okay. Like, wow, I was really not doing okay. I was really going down the drain. And he looked at my hand again, and I said, so how am I doing now? And he's like, you know, there's some things I can teach you about yourself if you're willing. If you want to learn, I'll teach you. And he was a kung fu master. And he stuck with his word. I was just like, yeah, he looked like a light in the middle of the darkness to me. And he stuck to his word, and he taught me a lot about myself. He taught me how to run the energy in myself, how to push energy out of myself, how to pull energy out of people. He really got me on the path of healing myself. And he's like, you know what you do, Angela, you're a natural healer. What you do, people study for years to just try to get to where you are just naturally. It was that helped me a lot, because even when I was still wandering around my path of debauchery that I was in, I always kept it stuck in my head. So I think it really saved me to get through and to gain focus. When I went to Japan, which is a whole other story in itself, but when I went to Japan, perfect place to learn discipline, right? I really put myself in a position to discipline myself and really love myself and take care of myself better.
When did you go to Japan? When was that?
94. I was 23. I was just like, I moved from Orange County, California, to Hollywood to get sober. Kind of, people just look at me, are you serious? Yeah, but
I can see why.
yeah, I moved to Hollywood to get sober. And it worked. And just when I was like, I'm not going to work in bars. I'm not going to do all these things. I want to live a different life. And just when I was like, nothing was happening for me, and I was just getting ready to start going down that road again, you know, and I got that was back in the day with pagers, you know.
Oh, pagers,
yes. I remember pagers, and I got a page from a friend, and she's like, I got this opportunity. I think you should check it out. And it picked me right up and took me out the door.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long were you in Japan?
The first time it was 6 weeks. I was there 3 times. And that changed my life a lot.
And did you study anything there when you were in Japan?
I didn't. I studied on my own. I was reading a lot and really just doing my own deep dive to figure myself out and pull myself out of the deep, dark hole I was swimming around in. Yeah.
And now, when you grew up, were you raised in a particular religion or a religious family, or not at all?
My mom was always going to a different church. She was the church lady. So my dad was pretty much atheist. Didn't get much from him. But my mom was always, but I didn't get a lot from my mom in that sense, because she was hypocritical, the life that she was living versus going to church, and what she was spewing out of her mouth versus what she was doing was never matching up, really. So I didn't get a lot from that. I mean, I love my mom. She taught me a lot of things, and I did get things from going to church, you know. But spiritually, none of that registered for me.
So I know that you do mediumship, you're clairvoyant, and we're talking about you as a healer. So when did the mediumship side of things start for you?
You know, that didn't start for, that didn't start for me until 2010, 3, maybe. I'm going to say it's the number that pops in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like at that point, by the time that happened, I had like learned Reiki and gone through 3 years of studies to be ordained. Like I was in a way different place. And then that started for me. It just started happening in sessions I was a massage therapist for 26 years. So that started, it just kind of started happening naturally when people would show up when I'd be doing a massage. Which is always interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Now let's go back a little because I'm glad you brought that up. What are you ordained as?
It's teachings of the Essenes and psychic abilities. Center of Light. My teacher was Lynn DeVerges, and the Center of Light. So it was a lot of teachings from the Essenes, basically. And the Essenes are individuals, Jewish sect of individuals that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? So it was really about communing with the angels and the spirit world and being as pure as you can within yourself and your thoughts, your mind, your emotions, like everything. And it's, it was a process of heal thyself.
Right.
So it was a huge healing time for me.
And how long is the training that you went through?
I went through 3 years.
Wow. Oh, that's what you mentioned that. And do you have certain things you do now as a minister, or is it's something that just is sort of wrapped into whatever you do normally?
It's just kind of wrapped into what I do normally. To be honest with you, I don't really tell people. I don't really talk about being a minister. I have married a couple individuals, which is fun. But I don't really advertise myself or put myself out there. It's more of like everything I learned through that, because it was all energetic stuff, you know, and the deep dive within myself and teaching people how to meditate and get to understand their own space and who they are and recognize how to work with energy and create it and destroy it and how that really functions. Giving healings. I went through a lot of things during the studies of like cleaning houses. Cleaning houses is always interesting. Have you ever done anything like that?
I did for a short while, but I stopped pretty much right away because I was cleaning this house for these artists, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But they were so like obsessive compulsive. I had to put the pillows a certain way, and I was kind of young, and I thought, I'm just not good at this. I was like, it wasn't cleaning, whatever. In fact, they didn't even really need that much cleaning, so I didn't last very long. And I also I worked for a Buddhist store where we go and clean in the stores, grocery stores at night. He had a business and I was part-time.
Oh, I meant like energetically clearing.
Oh!
But cleaning, yeah, I've had those jobs too.
Well, yeah, because they are tied together, because I am good at clearing houses, but I don't do it for other people. I learned on my own when I lived alone. I just intuitively would do my apartment a certain way, and people used to come in, they didn't want to leave. And it was an energetic thing. I mean, it was a nice little apartment, but it was also how I learned how to. But I think they do kind of go together in my mind, is the actual cleaning of houses and clearing houses. Because obviously, if you have a house that has certain obstacles in it, in terms of clearing, you might want to move them or get rid of them. And but I do it mostly for myself. I don't think I want to do other people's homes.
It's a lot.
I would think it would be.
It's a lot. I used to do it with my teacher. Part of our training was to go through that. And we went to a big house, like in South Central. This house was huge. And nobody lived in it. But this woman had her mother and I think her daughter, if I remember. It was a long time ago. And they were both ill. They both had crazy illnesses, and they both had caretakers. But they're the only people that lived in the house. The rest of it was this huge house. But we had to go through there and clean the house, and remove everything and close portals and clear energy. And after we were done, she's like, everybody clear your space, make sure you're not taking anything home with you. And we did that. But I remember waking up in the morning and there was a shadow person just sitting on the end of my bed. And I was like, oh, yeah, you can't be. But I haven't done those too often. But salt rituals, I lived in a building in Burbank that was, I had my teacher help me do some salt rituals there, and because it was just crazy. And she's like, I feel like it's Parade of Nations. Like there was so much going on. It was by the airport. You know, I realized after I moved from there, because there was a lot of alien activity going on in that whole area and within that building. And I realized when I moved away from there, they used to have a lot of flights go from Area 51 and back to Burbank. I never knew that. Yeah, I met some woman and her dad used to fly to Area 51 and back. And she was telling me about that. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, tell me what are the salt rituals? That sounds interesting.
You know, salt rituals are for things that you just can't get rid of by saging or doing different cleansings.
Right.
And it's always done at nighttime, and it's charging the salt, and you have to toss it all around and let them know basically the same thing, get out. And the salt burns them up. Like in Japan, actually, they'll put salt by the front doors of businesses and your home and stuff to keep evil out. Right. Basically. So it's same kind of concept. But because of what I've been trained to do to see energy the way I do is whatever wasn't leaving on its own, I was there to take care of that, to clear that out. And energy can show up in the strangest forms.
Like how?
You know, I remember this one apartment I did a cleaning on, and the energy looked like sticks. Looked like little sticks. Just weird. Can be blobby stuff. Can be, like at that apartment building in Burbank, there were some things, these creatures that I'd never seen anything like this before. They were huge, so tall, and they had orange on, and they were just really monstrous looking almost. And it's interesting. I saw them in that building by this apartment. This guy lived in this apartment. He had stuff going on. He was an alcoholic, but he had other stuff going on. And when he finally moved, I remember taking sage, and I was saging my apartment. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to walk down the whole walkway. And I did it. And I got by his apartment where I'd see a lot of stuff going on. And the whole sage thing caught on fire. Wow. It just burst into flames. Right? I got a little off track on that. Sorry. But salt rituals. So salt rituals they're just more intense to really clear the energy out that may be hanging out there that's
It's interesting because my own experience using salt it's very powerful. Like I got hired to do a house cleansing on, what was that show? It was like this show, I don't know, it's kind of a well-known show, and it was going to be a murder house, which I wasn't really thrilled with, but luckily they couldn't get permission to do like it was okay, because it was a murder show, and I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, so I just did a cleansing, what I knew at the time, and I used salt as part of it, and it interrupted all the equipment though. Oh, I didn't know that all the equipment stopped working in some part of the tech stuff, you know. And then one of my favorite remedies from spiritual cleansing is this salt bath that helps if you feel you've been what he calls minor curses, like unconscious jealousy, family issues. And if you take this, and salt is predominant in it, and it really works. And you don't even need to know where it's coming from. And he has there's this whole little prayer you do. And so I think salt is very, very powerful. You know, and I didn't know that there were specific, like you were trained to do. I could totally see that being very helpful. And I know living in LA, on my street especially, it got really intense in the pandemic, scary. We had a meth house down the street.
Oh, wow.
It became really aggressive, and it's gotten better. I just did a whole lot of mantras. I didn't know what else to do. It was because I've been there so long, and it just never had been quite this bad. There's always some, it's Venice, but yeah, it got a little freaky.
Yeah, the pandemic really purged a lot. It's been purging ever since. Yeah. It's like people would ask me, my clients, and people would ask me, what do you think of this? I'm like, we're in a huge purge. it's going to bring the nasty and the ugly up louder and more for us to see.
So yeah, we probably are still, I would say, definitely.
It's still going on, yeah.
Yeah, so salt people.
That's it. Charge your salt and stick it everywhere.
Do you charge it in the moonlight or just at night?
No, you charge it with energy from, like call Christ energy through yourself to just charge it.
Oh. And do you sometimes do a lot of salt at once and keep it on your altar, or do you tend to just do what you need?
I haven't used salt for a while. I mean, I take baths and do what you're talking about, like clearing things off. But I don't really normally keep it around like that, charged up. But it is good. I think it's because I have animals, so I don't want them eating the salt and getting into it.
It's true. With the animals, you got to be careful what you lay around the house.
Yeah, and even outside, I'm like, my neighbor calls me Snowy. She's like, the hummingbirds are coming, the squirrels,
Snow White,
the raccoons are outside my door. Like, yeah. So I'm always like careful of what I'm putting out because they'll try anything, really.
That's true.
They do.
And you don't want them to be thirsty.
No, but I think charging the salt and putting it around like your doors and like on your altar, like you said, is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that since you do past life readings, do you think that some of your connection with the Essene could be from past life being an Essene?
For sure.
Because that's, that seems like a particular path. Not everybody even is interested in the Essenes.
Yeah, and I do believe it connects to a path life because path life. It is a path life, right? Yeah, I believe it does because I just resonated. It's like when I went to Japan, I had no culture shock. I felt like I went home. And I've had past lives come up for me since then to reaffirm my experiences there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I got drawn to my teacher with the Essenes and the psychic abilities. Do you remember the what was it called? It was a paper they would put out once a week. You worked at the Bodhi stores, Bodhi Tree, so you would definitely remember this. It was like I don't remember. What is it when you want to remember something you can? New Life.
Whole Foods. Whole Life.
Whole Life magazine.
Yeah, it was like a Whole Life magazine.
Something like that, right? Yes. And I remember for weeks, I would get it and there would be this tiny little ad. Remember they put little ads in there? And there was this, it was so tiny and it was for Healing Clinic. But every time I would open it up, it would jump out to me like it was big on the page. And finally I called and I went to the Healing Clinic and I sat down from this woman I had never met and she started moving the energy and looking at the energy and I didn't say anything to her and she didn't ask me and then she just started spitting things out about me that I had never told anybody before and I was like, wow, who are you? And by the end of it, she invited me to a class. She's like, I think you could use this inner child class. And yeah, I could definitely use the inner child class. And it went from there. So it was definitely like, you get called to your path. So, yeah, I feel like I definitely had past life with that because it resonates with me. I feel like I'm where I belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My father, I think it was Marion Starnes. He was supposedly part of the Essenes and my brother who died, and I was too. And I like calligraphy a lot. Oh, and awesome. I used to really, I wanted to almost study it when I was younger, but I just didn't feel, drawn in this lifetime. And I still love it, And I think I was one of these copiers, because I can do it forever. I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't get bored. So you were like a scribe, you think? I think, copying text and things. I don't know. I don't think I was any kind of important person, but so that's a funny little connection I wanted to tell you. And I could see my father definitely. But yeah, I think that, most people that I talk to in the metaphysical world in terms of being called by things like that, posters or someone they meet or, and you're right, it sort of stands out, for you that's what people should listen to. Even if it's something you're not familiar with, you should, go and check it out and see what it's about because it could also lead to something else. Yeah,
I tell people all the time when they're talking about signs or what am I supposed to look for? I'm like, you'll hear it, you'll see the same thing again and again, or you'll hear the same thing in your conversation in your head, telling you to do something. Of course, now if it's crazy and insane, please get help. But, follow the signs. It's always going to keep showing up until you listen. It's kind of like those lessons in life we have. They're going to keep showing up until we get a grip on it and change our way, choose a different path, or deal with it differently.
Yeah, it's true. It can be repetitive in terms of, coming back and seeing if you're still interested. And so that, I think that's kind of helpful, because sometimes you can feel like you missed the boat, but you probably haven't. And, time is not linear anyway.
Yeah, you never miss what you're supposed to really experience.
It seems like, talking to you, that the way I would definitely personally describe you as primarily as sort of the archetype of the healer. Anyone that's done all the 26 years of massage work, I mean, that's hard work.
It is.
I remember going in my 30s. I loved going. I had a lot of friends that were doing body work. And so I could afford, it was very affordable at the time. And I didn't have a lot of overhead. I did all kinds of different work, energy healing. There was one woman who was an amazing masseuse, and she'd been doing it a long time. She impressed me a lot. Her name was Joy, and she showed me a picture before she became a masseuse and sort of after.
Wow.
And she was a very attractive woman, but you could see there was a kind of dark aura around her, and she looked really different. I mean, I couldn't figure out, it wasn't like a hair change, and it was such an energetic change. And she was really, I just loved her energy, and she was always trying new techniques and I think she was a Gemini and always wanted to learn something new, but she'd been doing it a long, long time when I met her. And I would say all of the energy work and the healings I had during that time were really, really powerful. They really helped me so much in so many levels. And so I've always really respected, even though I did also take Reiki 1 and 2 when I was really young. But I was not ready to do it. It was just too much for me. Even some of the people, my dad and I would go and work on someone. One was my mom's best friend's son went into a coma. It was like a drug thing, and we would go and work on him. And this huge amount of energy would come through my arm. And even though I knew what was going on, I was just too young to really feel comfortable to do it. Though I really like Reiki but I always thought, the whole healing people and what they do and the body work with the mind and of course it's grown, since that time. It's become more studied, I think, even. But it seems like a lot of what you do sort of centers around that archetype, whatever it is, whether it's mediumship or
it's all about healing. Yeah, I want to help people to feel better and heal their wounds and be able to move forward and grow. Some people want to come have a session and they want to know what's going to happen in 6 months. And I'm like, I'm not that person. Mm-hmm. I can see where you're at now, and if you take different paths, where it may lead you. But people change their mind like this. Snap of a finger. I've seen people's energy shift in front of me. Just I say something to them and they're like, oh, that's it. And off they go, Being a healer is amazing. And I think that's really the purpose behind it all. You do tarot and stuff, but you're helping people to get to where they're going. It's not just to feed their ego for the moment. And I feel like I got off course from your question.
No, you were talking about the idea of the archetype of the healer and how you, you really enjoy helping, and
I do.
You want people to be healed, and you're helping to facilitate that in different ways. It sounds like you can do it.
Yeah. Even past life readings, like you were talking about, all that always connects to any lifetime that shows up, which lifetimes are all simultaneously. That's a whole other thing to wrap your brain around, right? But when that lifetime shows up, it always connects to what somebody's going through right now, because it's that information coming through to help them with where they're at right now. It's like, hey, remember this. You're living this life now that we're in, owning this body currently. And, this is going to help you to get to where you're going. I think that's one of the main reasons that have these abilities to connect to spirit the way we do, and connect to our higher selves. is to help us to heal and learn and grow. Yeah.
So what do you do since you're professional at this? What are some of the things you do if you find there's someone that gets stuck, and in terms of the process, you feel they come back and they haven't moved an inch, like they just seem caught in a wheel of the same pattern? Is it something you can't do anything about? Are there different tools to help catalyze breaking out of? That's probably one of the most challenging things I have found. It doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen enough to sort of go, how come this person is so caught? And they've gone to even other people. Is it only because they don't want to see things? Because I mean, most of us kind of fall in the middle, like we're willing to see certain things and other things we're not ready for. So
Yeah. Personally, I find that sometimes it's people don't want to do their work. They don't want to do what they are seeing and what's being shown to them. They don't want to step into it. They want to keep putting a blinder on, or that's too much, or that's too hard, or I just want what I want right now. There's that. So sometimes it comes up that way, where I have to talk people through, like, you're in a loop. It's like a record player and the groove is going on, the needle. You have to start changing something every time that thought comes up. Think something different, go do something different. It's like, when people stop a habitual thing, they usually replace it with something healthier, right? So it's the same thing with these lessons that we're learning, and it's choosing a different path. But energetically, what I can do, because I see energy the way I do and can move it, I've helped people a lot by moving energy that's stuck. We're energy manifested into form, right? Everything is. So, looking at people's chakras and their organs, like when people get illness and stuff, that's energy stuck there. Of course, sometimes there's genetics and there's things like that, but a lot of times it's energy stuck there. So because of what I learned to do, or just know how to do, both, I guess, really, is I've been able to help people by moving the energy or cutting cords that they're tied to, that keeps them in the same thing all the time. But they're the things I notice. It's people doing their work and actually stepping up to the plate for themselves. Stop being, a lot of people like being a victim. Do you notice that? A lot of victims.
We've talked about this with our favorite therapist, psychologist, Merle, and also energy worker, is that we live right now in a very victim rewarding society. And that, you can even see that in talent shows. You can be a victim, and people love to hear, the story of,
wow.
Yeah, now sometimes people just share their story, which is different. And you don't get a sense that they're just trying to give you like their background. But then there are people that kind of milk it, like, oh, and I suffered this and that, and
Poor me.
Yeah. And I was like, who hasn't suffered? And so, that's because I'm older now, it's like at some point we all are going to experience a lot of suffering of some kind. Yours might be different, but yeah, I think that we've talked about that and how, the victim can be effective. There's a gain from being a victim, and that's something one would have to just acknowledge in a very detached way. Like, what are the gains I have in being a victim, so that you understand what you would be giving up, and then maybe what you would get instead. But there's benefits for victimhood, that attitude of victimhood. Oh,
for sure, definitely they feed off of it. It definitely keeps them in that space and getting attention. And
Now, one thing that you reminded me of when you were talking about, helping to cut the cords energetically, because sometimes I think that people think that we can't get any extra help from people. But when I went to Tai Chi for the very first time in LA, there was a flyer at the Bodhi tree, and he offered like 50% off or something huge for any Bodhi tree worker. And evidently, me and this other girl, Daniela, were the only ones who ever took up the offer.
Oh, really? Wow.
And I was very, very tired a lot at the time. I was doing readings, and I didn't quite know how to, work
Clean
with
yourself.
that, clean myself. And I remember going to Tai Chi, and he gave me energy. I know he did. But then on the other hand, I was stepping up. I was going to class. I was learning but I think I could feel he helped. And he didn't say he was doing it. He's a very, Tim O'Connor, I totally recommend. He does Tai Chi. He's just a lovely human being, but also a great Tai Chi teacher. And I just remembered that was distinctly, that he helped me when I was very, very low energetically. And I was trying to do things. And Michael and I learned very quickly doing readings is exhausting. And you should never do it full time. Good luck if you do, because we found out we were in our 30s and we started doing it pretty much full time for a while. And during the week, we'd go on the weekends, we couldn't move. We were just so tired. And it's just, you can't, no matter what you say, you're going to use some of that Kundalini energy while you're doing. Also, you're helping others, and you just have to replenish it. You have to learn to say no and go back. We found rest did help, and doing just normal things, reading a book and not always metaphysical things. But it was really kind of eye-opening that, that's something where I can only work so many hours, no matter what, doing readings. I just hit a wall. And I know that now, at least, whereas in the beginning, I didn't really, I didn't think about it because both me and Michael came from very hardworking backgrounds, but, doing non-metaphysical things is different energetically.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Like I agree. Can't do that. I can't do more than 3.5 hours. I'm tapped out. Like I can't even think straight.
Mm-hmm.
Can't think
you
straight.
Get that fog for sure. I used to get psychic headaches, psychic hangovers the next day.
Yeah, exactly. It's those moments where you sit down, the next thing you know, you're asleep, and you're like, you wake up, you're like, wow, I was really tired. Yeah. I try not to do more than 3 hours a day. That's too much.
Yeah, that seems like a good amount. Now, have you ever, I was kind of curious, since you do past life readings with people, have you ever done a reading where it was very peculiar, the past life, like the place or the situation, anything that kind of stands out as maybe something you wouldn't expect as a person doing a past life reading, something someone did, or the effect of something that maybe wouldn't seem like it would have an effect, but does?
Off the top of my head, because I seem to let a lot of things go. I've learned to let go. Like, I don't remember what I said in a session. Sometimes, I'll do a session with somebody and have a repeat, and they'll be like, do you remember? And I'll vaguely remember, or something will come back, and I'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I remember. But I let go of a lot of things. But what does come back is somebody was in dinosaur time, that time period. And I'm like, wow, I've never talked to somebody had that come up.
I've never heard that, actually.
Yeah, I never had that before. Never seen that. I've all different time periods. I've talked to people that were on different planets and different places, but that was a new one. That was definitely.
Do you ever go into the future with people too? Future lives?
No. I used to do future stuff more. My sister would always be like, "You're so good at that. Why don't you do that anymore? You could." And I just have, I don't know what it is. I really don't remember what it was that kind of backed me out of that. I mean, I see things and people tell me all the time, oh, that happened, or you told me about that, or you told me this person was this way, and then they, whatever.
Well, I mean, it's probably, I mean, it may be nothing. It could be just a preference. I wouldn't have thought I would be interested in the future and predicting, because just from my background of going to readers, what I found was pure psychics could never get my future right. They would be really accurate about what was going on with me. So I totally trust them. They had really good reputation. And I eventually did come across Marion Starnes, and then this really interesting African-American woman. She was the most psychic person I personally ever met, for me, because I don't know if I was always changing the future or what it was, because I was frustrated because I could tell they knew things about me, but this one Black woman was amazingly accurate about things that didn't even make sense to me. And they sounded nonchalant at first, but one ended up being meeting Michael and starting a business, because she said something about, well, there's this blonde-haired man and you're going to go into business with him, but don't do it that 1 year. It's going to be really hard. And I was shaking my head like, I don't know any blonde-haired men. I don't want to go into business. I was always thinking, and I think I met Michael like 2 years later, and it wasn't after a while that I realized that she was talking about him. And I know for some people it sounds really simple, but for me, nothing like that ever came true before. And because the fact too that there was no blonde-haired men, no ideas of business. I was just taking jobs. I didn't even have a career at the time. But she was so much fun and really eccentric, and she had a really good reputation. It was like $35 in the 90s. That's when it was really cheap to go to readings. And but anyway, it could be like, it could be something maybe you'll do later. But the thing I find about doing the future, for me, that makes it a little easier is I really do see that it's probability, but you can look at how high a probability, and so much so that my clients even ask me now, what do you think? Is it a low, medium, or high probability? Because I use that word so much and say, okay, let's look at it. Is it, well, yeah, it's kind of low, but that gives them an idea. Like if it's a low probability for a job interview, maybe I could influence it, or maybe it just tells me I should keep my options open. And so it's not telling you not to do it. And so Michael, I really love the probability thing. When I ask you about the future things, my dad was trained in past life, and he was one of the first trained past life people, I think, in the US in this one school. And he was doing it, he's Aquarian, he's doing it long before anyone else was doing it. But when he was practicing, he decided to practice on me to go into the future. Like he just thought, well, if you can do the past, why can't you do the future? And I ended up having like an experience with this amethyst healing table that where I was in this future life. And there turns out like about 8 years ago, I discovered there's this amethyst healing table.
I heard something about that.
And I was like, oh my God, I thought this was going to be, first of all, I thought I was making it up. Like I really did. I thought, this sounds like an imagination type thing. I was like this woman astronaut somewhere, and I'd gotten wounded, and I went to this like healing place, and I just thought it was my imagination. But then when I came across that thing with the amethyst table, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. There may be something to it, especially because I just kind of, my dad, he's kind of crazy doing this. Not the past life, but just wanting to put me into the future, But anyway, that's what I thought about. But, like I said, I think people should, you certainly seem to have some choices in what you do as a healer. And then sometimes the universe will, if you're meant to do it, it'll just keep, saying, hey, Angela, how about this,
It does, yeah. And that probability, it's interesting because the angels that I, when I'm doing sessions, because people ask me that kind of thing too, and they'll give me like 98% or 65%. They'll actually give me percentages of what they think of probabilities. I guess I really, I think the more I learned about how energy works and how we shift ourselves, like this go this way, go that way so fast. And I guess maybe there's certain things that are set in stone, shall we say, but because that is where I backed off maybe some of the looking too far in the future kind of thing, because people change so quickly. That shift happens. But I think it's exciting when something does come up and then it actually happens. I've seen things about my own life that came up and did happen, come to pass. So can't deny it when it's there.
Right.
Can't deny it when it's there. But I find that most people that are swimming too much, and even myself, not now, but back in the day, when I want to know too much about the future, I'm so not present in the now. And I notice that when people want to know so much about their future, they're so not in the present of their now to even create what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that it's good to sort of be centered in the moment, in the sense that it gives you an orientation. And the opposite can be true. I've met people, and I was, I think, a little bit too stuck in the past. That's why I think the universe wanted me to predict. It helped me with my constant ruminations of my past to learn to not do that too much. It's good to your past, but I was definitely doing the whole
too.
Cancerian things a lot, and
We do.
And
Oh
I
my
thought,
God.
okay, this is ironic that I'm the person predicting the future because I don't look at my own future. So, but I agree with you. I mean, I think it's probably all about a little bit about balance. But I find that I get a kick out of the idea that maybe because I don't particularly use a psychic skill to predict. I use the Kabbalah and the tarot. And I just get a kick out of the fact that I can do that with these systems, and it's incredibly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Where I've gotten time frames where psychics can't, and I can't really say it's a psychic thing. It's a different kind of metaphysical thing.
It is.
And that's why I'm always like kind of impressed that there are systems that can help you to do that. And yes, I have to learn to interpret it, but I can teach people that, and Michael does. You can teach people to interpret time in the Kabbalah. And that's why I think I'm also just kind of fascinated with time, like, concepts of time and is it real? And, that is really just a fun topic, but it can be a little, there've been a couple of times where I've seen things that have disturbed me in the future, though luckily it was not with clients.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have any control over that, unfortunately. And that's why, I mean, be careful what you wish for. So,
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, you there's some things that aren't good and luckily there are good things you see too. And I'm not necessarily talking about bad news, like what I saw once was more of a theme of something coming to the United States. It was something I saw in a scrying session in the 90s. And I wrote it down and it was frightening. It was fascism. And I never told anyone else, but Michael knows. We were doing a magic group, and I've never seen anything that scared me before. And I didn't understand it. It was because it was late 90s. I was like, what is this about? But the imagery, it was all like very fascist, very Nazi. And the feeling was very frightening. And I thought, oh yeah, that's the Trump era.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but a lot of those sort of long-term kind of mysterious oracle stuff, you only learn over time how to look at it symbolically or where it is energetically, So but what do you think about since you're so much into the energy and sort of where you started as a person to the energy in the world now with so much instantaneous connections? How do you view that energetically and metaphysically in terms of how can people learn to cope with that huge change in a lot of people's lifespans, going from a certain almost separation to now just this instantaneous kind of connection?
I'm like dumbfounded in what to say. So let me grasp what you're saying first. So you're saying how things have moved differently, and when you're saying separation do you mean separation from just what's gone on in the last few years, or you're saying separation? I want to grasp what you're trying to say.
I think more over several decades, like coming from a time where we didn't have this ability to know so much about what's going on in the world, and to the movement from the internet to social media to Facebook, how the energy in the world has been affected on, obviously on a practical level, but also metaphysically. I feel like there's a different kind of world.
It is. Well, I think there's like two sides to like everything. It's good. It's expansive. It's allowing people to realize that they do have a way of connecting differently. But at the same time, I feel like it was like a friend of mine and I were talking last night about this whole new thread.
Oh, right.
Thing. And I'm like, it's just another thread. It's literally like, because she was reading somebody's review on it. And they were saying how there were so many ads or different things coming up. And I'm like, that's just a part of the thread to suck you in. Because it's got the good thing of the awakening and bringing more people information and bringing things into view and to manifestation quicker. But at the same time, it is that whole thing of it sucks you into the vortex of something that could definitely twist your mind. I mean, think about how many people, children, have committed suicide from things on the internet because of how it's connected and how people are twisted and twisting their minds and, the things that come up, I think it's got both sides to it, really. And I think it can be really wonderful. And I think it can be extremely dangerous at the same time. Because metaphysically, how it's affecting things metaphysically, it's funny. I hear my angels laughing right now. And they're like, well, metaphysically, that hasn't really changed much. It's just maybe waking people up more to, especially to telepathy.
That's a good point.
That's
a good point.
That's something I'm really good at doing is telepathy. That's how I talk to animals, but that's how I think that's one of my specialties is to speak to the spirit of other people, whether they're alive in a body or they're passed on. If they're willing to speak to me, I can speak to them. And it helps a lot. But I think, I don't know if I answered that correctly, but.
Well, there's no answer. I was just more curious because you've lived long enough to sort of experience it, whereas some people are born into it, so it's probably not going to be quite the same.
Yeah, they don't have any concept of the things that we have. What is it, Gen X? The whole Gen X.
Yeah.
I'd be a Gen Xer. Would you be a Gen Xer too?
I think
Are you in that time period?
I'm in the baby boomer, the very end of the baby boomer.
Oh, so you're close enough.
Yeah.
It is different. Sometimes I wish we could go back to that place of, the easiness of having the phone hanging on the wall. And
I missed the letter writing. But I missed it a long time ago. I mean, and I used to love to write letters. I used to have to write 20 letters to get 5 back. But I really liked doing it when I think about it. My friends always loved my letters, evidently. I don't even know what I wrote in them when I come to think about it.
Of course.
It was, but it was just something about getting a letter and you carry it around with you and they're writing. And then I had a couple friends that had, drawing abilities. So they would draw these cool pictures in their letters. So I still have them. And I'll always miss that. I mean, you just can't go back. You might have a friend or have a pen pal, but it's just not the same. It's not part of the world. And that's the way it is. There's positive and negatives in change. And it's not, though I do feel like, remember the good old days? I do feel like that does happen to all of us if we live long enough.
Yeah, and if we lived in a different time thing, it's just, I'm honestly concerned about kids nowadays. I just feel concerned about them. And not that I want to be negative or a downer, but I think it's kind of concerning that people just give their kids an iPad and sit them there for the day. They're not learning a lot of things to function in life on their own. Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said about allowing children to have a childhood as much as possible. Not in an overprotective way, but not in a way that they get to use their imagination.
Yeah, exactly. Go outside, get dirty, build forts, play house, figure it, be more creative.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see kids doing that now. I mean, the world is kind of crazy. I don't think it's as safe either to just let your kid go wander around and ride bike around wherever.
That's true.
But,
probably in some places it still is, but certainly not in LA.
Not in LA, no. Hell, I'm afraid to ride bike in LA.
I should be, but I only ride in Venice. And I do wear a helmet. I think people should wear helmets.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Somebody throws you off your bike, you're going to need that helmet.
So we have just a couple minutes left, and the best way to reach you for any kind of, and to find out more is your website, correct?
Yes.
That's Angela Zeyn, Zeyn, and she's on our website. All of our guests have a link on our website too, and you can contact her, look at her webpage, and make appointments and see also what she does more specifically. Though I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think people got a good sense of that.
I shared things with you I usually don't talk to people about.
The nature of this show, I always find out something new about people I know. It's really fun that way. And I think that's true whenever you sit down with anybody for long conversations, and that's part of the idea of the show, is we're just simply having a long conversation.
Basically,
hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, thanks for coming back, too. I really enjoyed having you. And anyway, thank you all for listening in to our show. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a lovely week and stay cool.